Hi, this is Cassie Brighter, and I'm here with Erika Miley, who is a sexual and mental health therapist, and we're having the sex talk.
Woohoo! Thank you for having me.
This is not exactly the sex talk. This is we're working on the title for it, but we're calling it sex talk interviews. The sex talk is something that Moshumi does in bed, sitting in bed with another sexologist, and it's a little bit more of a focused conversation. This is expanding on that concept. So this is the TEDx of her TED.
I love it.
But one of the things that drew me to having a conversation with you is how much your work focuses on the intersection of sexuality and shame.
Yes. Yes. Brene Brown she has informed us so much in what shame can do to our perspective on life. And here's the reality, like sexuality and shame are incredibly tightly wound. From the time we're young, shame is encountered from telling us not to touch our genitalia to how we go through puberty. I mean, how many times have teenagers been called gross because of their doing natural physical development of being a teenager?
Yeah.
And all the way through adulthood.
I think a lot of that is the fact that parents are recalling their own awkwardness and shame when they were that age, and they just don't want that memory in their heads.
Absolutely. It's like, let's just bring the generational shame and hand that backpack to somebody else.
I've been keeping this in the attic for years.
Did you know that this was going to be part of your inheritance?
Exactly. Yeah. I remember the conversation around masturbation that I had with my parents because it was so hypocritical. And I remember having read a little bit of Dr. Wayne Dyer, I think it was.
Oh, yes.
Your erroneous zones and whatnot. And so a precocious therapist on my part. But I use that to argue the point that psychologists say this is natural. My father said, I don't know that it is. I'm not sure that it is. About a year later, I found his porn stash, and I found so betrayed and so outraged.
Oh, yeah. You're like, yeah, but you told me, but I don't understand. And then then you could probably, I imagine now, see his shame right all the way through that. Probably shame about himself, but didn't even say that to you. That little snippet was probably more for him than it was for you. And how would you know that as a kid? How would you ever know?
At the very least, like once the 8-year-old knows that Santa is not real, I'm sorry, spoilers.
Yeah, plug
but the moment that kids know that, you can have honest conversations about Christmas shopping. The moment that your kid finds your porn stash, I think that it's time to have honest conversations about sex.
Yes, or so come on, folks, before that, and we'll give you as many resources as we possibly can so that you can have these conversations with kids before they find your porn stash.
Yeah,
because now it'll be online, and now it would be that them finding your browser history.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit shocking to me as a trans woman to realize more and more the amount of internalized shame that cisgender women have in the subject of their period. Much exponentially more so for trans men, but focusing on the larger population of clients, you have women just in their 40s and 50s, I mean, even approaching menopause and having never really come to terms with this aspect of their physiology. It's crazy.
Absolutely. I have clients, I have friends, I have family who are grossed out about the idea of having any kind of sexual contact when they're actually menstruating, or having just this gross out response from their own bodies from like dealing with maybe some of the symptoms of having a menstruation, like bloating or any of the cramping that happens, and just this basic disgust with their physiological system that there's nothing that they could do to change.
And it's an absolute part of life. It's a really important primary part of life. Something that is interesting about the transgender experience is that you get to witness the cultures of both genders. And so you get to be a fly on the wall to some extent. So one thing that for me is really captivating is how when I'm in women's spaces alone with just women, and I don't know if it's something that you are conscious of or if it's something that you've become desensitized to, but the moment that men enter the room, the
Mm.
language changes so much. It's so easy for women to say something like, "Oh, I'm bleeding really heavy today," or "I'm on my second tampo today," or something like that, as you know, in casual conversation, but never with a man in the room.
Right. That self-censoring so that you don't, in quotation marks, gross them out. Don't send them to the store for your lady
And
things
what
in
are we
quotation
protecting
marks.
them of? You know, this is
Right.
important knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine what a perspective that you get put into, essentially being forced to be a cultural anthropologist, like watching these dynamics play out.
Yeah, it is astounding to me because I mean, one thing that I have to say, and it's difficult for me to be in the position where I'm kind of defending men's position. I always feel a little awkward about that. But
Oh, I
we
imagine so.
blame them so much for being ignorant, but yet we keep them ignorant. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. There's power plays in both directions.
Hmm.
And those are things that it has been very difficult for culturally for us to have conversations about, where power actually lies, or where power is used in the absence, what can feel like the absence of power,
Yeah,
like
well, you find the little strings that you can pull, even if you're in
exactly.
the marginalized side of a power dynamic. You still figure out like, well, how can I get some leverage, right?
Yes. Oh, I love the kind of painted picture that, if those of you, is a movie that came out many years ago, so spoilers, I guess, whatever. um My Big Fat Greek Wedding,
I
when
like that movie.
the mom says, like, the men are the head but women are the neck, and they can turn the head in the direction they want it to go. And I mean, just that picture paints for you like that cultural dynamic from
Hmm.
various cultures, not every culture but various cultures, about like where power can reside.
I think an interesting movie also, and then let's stop talking about movies because that'll get me out talking for hours. But Amy Schumer's Trainwreck was for me really
Oh,
interesting because she gave herself permission to act like a man.
yeah.
But it was interesting to me because I mean it was empowering. It was a cool movie from that point of view. You know,
Mhm.
she gets him to go between her legs and give her oral sex, and then she's just like whatever, rolls over and goes to sleep. And that moment was pretty iconic.
I mean, what a challenge to what has happened to so many people, that having that power dynamic flipped. And the more that we acknowledge these power dynamics and how they play out, the more likely we can have fun with them.
Yeah, and I hope that people realize that the ultimate goal is not for this adversarial kind of a thing, which is like,
Yes.
you've been a jerk to me, so I get to act like a jerk to you, or for a woman to try to figure out the way men do it, but just to come into her own power.
And here's the thing, if we allow ourselves to play with these dynamics a little more, we
Hmm.
can, and I, not all of the BDSM community, but some of the BDSM community does a really good job of exploring how sexy these dynamics can be when we allow ourselves to play with them. And that's what I mean by playing with them, is that if it is okay if you find certain dynamics sexy, if you want to be in a more submissive role, or if you want to be in a more dominant role, and actually planning to play those out can be really incredible to your sense of pleasure.
Absolutely, within a consensual informed envelope, of
Yeah.
course. But it's nice that you bring up BDSM because I think that kink can do a lot to unpack shame. I don't know if you've
Ooh.
had any kind of exposure to the way that can be a therapeutic tool in a way.
Absolutely. I work with, my practice is kink friendly and, ethically non-monogamy friendly. So I work with a lot of people from various communities, and many of my folks who've been through like physical trauma or emotional trauma have talked very much about their kink being able to unlock and expose themselves to things that were very, very healing for them to experience. And they were all done in a very consensual way for that person. And so they were able to explore fantasies that they've had, or explore pain that they've had that they've never been able to explore in any other way. And then using that as a way to shift the narrative of their experience of trauma altogether. Until we know the entire story, our brains will happily fill in the gaps for us. That's often when I'm working with, regardless of the relationship configuration, whether it's a monogamous couple or if it's a polycule, the thing that I hear from many people is this: no, this is what I meant by this, or this is what this fantasy actually means to me, or this is what the story actually means to me. And what the partner or partners thought they meant were usually completely different.
How do you accomplish that? How do you accomplish this filling in of the gaps? Do you sometimes sit couples together and have them discuss it, or do you encourage conversations? Or
So I actually do this in a fairly structured way. I do this so when I see a couple or a polycule, what have you, I actually see every person individually first, because most of the time we are more likely to be more honest when our partners are not there. And that doesn't mean that we're all liars. I mean, maybe it does a little bit, but our intention
we
isn't
filter
malice.
our conversation.
Yes, it's not malice that's intended. It's I want you to see me in the best light you possibly can, right? That armor that we talked about earlier. We talked about armor and what we put out in front of us so that nobody gets to know the true us. And so oftentimes I see people individually and then I bring them together. And the idea isn't to out everyone and to out everyone's dirty laundry. That's not the goal. The goal is, okay, what is the common goal held by these individuals that they want to attain together? What's the map? Where are we going? And then do all of these folks see this map? Do they see all the pieces? Do they see all of the roads? Do they see all of the really necessary information, like that someone has trauma in their past, or that someone would really like to open up the relationship? Or if they're there to open up their relationship, do we have roads that we need to walk down as far as being able to do that? Do we have old traumas that might be triggered as a result? So being able to have these conversations with my clients, it does take some care and oftentimes time.
I imagine, especially in a polycule situation, you have to get everybody's incorrect assumptions, the unlearning, the getting the, oh my gosh, that would be interesting.
Yes, it's a lot of fun. We have a good time.
Erika,
I mean, I don't know if it's a good time for them, but yeah.
It must be interesting to watch. Yeah, and productive for them, laborious but productive for them.
Yes.
We're coming to the end of the sex talk, so I'm wondering if you can leave us with 2 points that I'd like to touch on. What's the best resource that you could point us to, or a couple of resources? And then also, what are you working on lately that we want to touch on before you go?
For shameless plug, Sex Talk with Erika Miley is my podcast. I'd love for you all to listen. But as far as like wonderful resources, Dr. Emily Nagoski's Come As You Are is one of my favorites. And there are some really wonderful sex positive resources out there, like O School, like Sex Positive Families. I encourage you to look all of those up. They are wonderful, wonderful resources. And as far as what I'm working on right now, I'm about to launch a summit called Shit Grad School Didn't Teach You. And it is all about helping helpers who really are having gaps from their education. It's not their fault. We need more sexual health education. We need more education about building a business. We need more education about how to be a professional and have babies.
And this is a digital format, right? So nobody has to travel.
Nobody has to travel. The summit is completely online. You can find everything at sextalkwitherika.com/summit 2020.
Wonderful. Erika, thanks so much for joining me. This has been another Sex Talk interview with Cassie Brighter, and joining me today was Erika Miley. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.